Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Tuesday, the 2nd of April 2019, on what has actually become a rather interesting and somewhat busy Tuesday evening in the east because of a developing coastal storm / nor'easter. Now, nor'easter, a term that gets thrown around a lot, and you have to remember that you could probably apply that term to anybody from the coastal Carolinas all the way up through New England. And there's a long history behind it. You can, if you Google it and go on Wikipedia, you can read all about its New England origins and what the locals used to mean by it. The problem is it's a term that was basically confined to storms that had widespread impact. We tend to think of those storms as storms that impact the big cities, Washington, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, and sometimes you get the impacts over smaller geographic areas. The coastal Carolinas got it today with this developing low, which actually looks pretty impressive on the satellite radar going into this evening. We have some other things that are happening with this storm, that it's moving out to the east far enough offshore that it really is going to be impacting Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and on up toward, if you go further north, say into the Hudson Valley, western Connecticut, the impact's going to be minimal to zero. But southeastern New England, southeastern Massachusetts, out by Cape Cod, probably going to get into some solid rain. And the back edge of that heavier rain may touch eastern Long Island and eastern Connecticut and into Rhode Island. And then the result will be tomorrow, the very dry air that's going to be pulled into the east, and that is going to bring in the very low dew points down in the 20s and low 30s, and with temperatures climbing up into the 60s, relative humidity levels are going to be quite low. So we have elevated fire risk, which is a little early for my neck of the woods, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, but conditions, when they develop, and that's when we've got it now going into the first part of April. You usually get to start to see that a little bit deeper into the spring, but it's here now. Okay, so let's get started this evening with what's happening, and we're going to start off with the watches and warnings that are up, and there's not a whole lot here with respect to the land watches and warnings. This storm having a big impact on the coastal waters with that reddish-brown area offshore. Those are hurricane force wind warnings, and we have them up for areas just east of the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Storm warnings in the purple on either side. Now, you'll notice that there's a kind of a gap here. You go from storm warnings to gale warnings to storm warnings again, and that warning gap is because of the fact that the surface low is actually moving more to the east initially and then makes its turn to the northeast. So in doing that, there's, I guess, this pocket where the winds are going to be slightly less that don't reach storm force criteria, at least according to the Weather Service office that's responsible for that particular area. It's hard to see the lighter shades of I don't know what color that is, a very, very dull yellow or perhaps a very light brown, all indicating, the yellow anyway, is indicating elevated fire risk. I didn't get a chance to read the statements up here with regards to what's going on up in southern New England, but I'm wondering if that's for the possibility that there could be a little bit of snow. Let's take a look and see what they're offering here on their special weather statements. Nope, it's a wind advisory actually for parts of the Hudson Valley and across in through central New England. The growing season, you've got frost issues in the interior North Carolina. And by the way, there was snow today in some of the higher elevations of South and North Carolina from this weather system. I didn't notice whether there was anything in terms of amounts, but I did notice that there were some surface reports, including Greensboro, North Carolina, seeing some snow. And then as we go out to the west, we've got a couple of areas where there are some wind issues going on, red flag warnings in southern New Mexico. But once again, it's a sort of a relative absence of severe weather. We don't have anything like that. No winter storm watches or warnings. A couple of small counties in California and the Sierra Nevadas, and 2 tiny counties in southern Wyoming with winter weather advisories. And that's about it. So the quiet time for severe weather, however, is going to be coming to an end. And that is going to begin tomorrow, and especially for Thursday. But at least as far as tonight is concerned, just to give you the look across the country, 2 pockets where you could see some thunderstorms out in the west, and another one up in northern Wisconsin, eastern Minnesota, and that's it. And then there's a small area off the North Carolina coast that's going to be gone soon with the weather system that is moving through. I did happen to notice that some of the rainfall amounts there near the coast and just inland, there was variation. So dependent, certainly was depending on where you were. There was a lot of variation involved. But I did notice most of the rainfall amounts were on the order of 1 to 2 inches, and there were some pockets of 2 to 2.5, 3 inches in a few places. But we're at the end of this as far as the Carolinas are concerned, as this system is starting to pull away. Now, this was the surface map plot as of 2 o'clock this afternoon. The the 5 p.m. plot is not out yet, but we do have analysis from SPC that I'm going to show you in a second, where you can look at it hour by hour. The low center was about 1,004 millibars here, and the gradient on the western side was actually fairly tight, and on the northern side too, was a 50-knot wind barb from the buoy that was measured here. You see 66, 61. That's a 50-knot wind barb that was indicated there. And on the east side of the cold front, we've got 40 knots here at one of the buoys. And then, of course, on land, right near the coast, every bit of 20 to 30 knots at times, with probably some higher gusts. The 3-dot moderate rain and even the 4-dot heavy rain symbols showing up along that stationary boundary that you see. And you'll notice, by the way, on the temperatures in inland North Carolina, they were in the raw 30s to around 40. And on the other side of the frontal boundary, you had temperatures that were up in the mid-50s to near 60. So you definitely had a zone there separating the warmer tropical air to the southeast and the very cool marine air that was in there in the northwest. And just judging by some of these temperature numbers that I'm seeing here, temperature dew points 37, 36, 36, 34. Not a big shock that in some of the elevated areas that they did indeed see some snow. So let's take a look at, this is SPC's map from 5 o'clock this afternoon, and the surface low, and then you see the radar. I want to make sure you get a good shot of this, but you can actually see the swirl there. This is going to have a really good looking satellite signature tomorrow morning when we look at the visibles. But the radar echoes are actually hooking around there. You're getting that comma head, which is oh so typical of soon-to-be well-developed storms. And we've also continued to see the pressures fall. The lowest pressure here is probably on the plot down to about, I would say, 1,000 millibars. So we've lost another 4 millibars in the last 4 hours. So we continue to see some steady deepening here, and the radar echoes extend northward to just off the southern New Jersey coast. They are trying to back north and northwestward, but they're only going to get so far. And then as the low begins to move away more to the east-northeast, you're going to start to see this area of rain shift to the east. Here's the satellite loop tonight, and again, very impressive here. You can pull this image, by the way, I pull from, this is the North Atlantic image that you can get from the National Hurricane Center's website, nhc.noaa.gov, and you're beginning to see the explosive thunderstorm development there, that big bright white blotch that pops up. I'll get a little close-up shot here, right in there. You can actually pick out where the low center is. I love looking at these things on the satellite in the springtime because, obviously they're not tropical, but you can get very well-developed cyclones in the spring that have very impressive signatures on the satellite. And of course, given the fact that there's been an absolute absence of storms overall in the Atlantic during this winter in general, we haven't really had many times where we've been able to pull up beautiful satellite loops of strong storms out in the Atlantic. We've seen a ton of them out in the Pacific, but this one is pretty well defined here, and it continues to move away more to the east than to the north, which of course is going to be key to the forecast area from southern New Jersey on up into southwestern New England. That's the spot that misses out on this because of the fact that we're going to take this low and move it more to the east first and then turn it to the northeast. So there's this area that's in between that's basically going to get minimal impact. I've been of the opinion that New York City is going to be the western cutoff line, and weather models have actually kind of pulled more in that direction of going further east. So I'm kind of happy about this, that this is sliding out. Excuse me. I'm really sorry. It's very dusty in here, and if I spend too much time, I wind up tasting that dust while I'm speaking. Trust me when I tell you, I can literally taste it on my tongue as I'm speaking. So anyhow, the low is going to move out. We're going to get whatever rain we're going to get tonight, and for my area. But let's look at it on the NAM's point of view. And there's your low, which supposedly by 8 o'clock, it's going to be 10 millibars lower than it is now. It's going to really have to blow up in a big hurry in the next 2 hours to get there. It's a pretty big pressure fall to ask for, but this thing is going to deepen considerably, and you'll see that surface low does move out to the east, and that northern fringe of the range is basically gets shut off as it does so. And in fact, on the late afternoon NAM run, it doesn't even get anywhere close to New York City, and the back edge is somewhere near the Nassau-Suffolk line on Long Island and through central Connecticut. You do get that area of heavy rain that moves into eastern Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. Boston gets into some rain, and of course in some of the higher elevations in parts of maybe even into northeastern Connecticut, central Mass, and into New Hampshire and down into Maine. You'll probably have some wet snow out of this, and the NAM at least is going pretty hog wild with developing an area of heavy snow as the low really gets wrapped up. But I think that's going to be dependent on just how strong this storm gets. Now, the tight gradient with the winds are offshore. You have this shortwave in the northern stream, remember, that's bringing down some drier air, and that's going to come into play during tomorrow. And I want to show you here the 2-meter dew points, which are going to be dropping down into the 30s and the 20s. But if we watch here on this map, you can see the impact of the deepening surface low. You'll see those wind barbs out there in the Atlantic around the surface low, those 50 knot plus wind barbs. The winds on land are going to be, it's going to be breezy, but I don't think it's going to be crazy windy tomorrow. And certainly from the standpoint of the impact from the storm along the immediate coast, you're not going to really notice it too much. Although you do get into some 40 and 50 knot winds just offshore the Cape. You can see it out here when the low is out to the east. But look at those dew points during the day tomorrow. And then, of course, that northern shortwave swings through. And as we go through the afternoon, the dew points actually drop down into the 20s. And we're talking about temperatures that are going to be up in the 60s tomorrow. So conceivably, there could be a spread of 40 or more degrees between the dew point and the temperature. So we're talking about humidity levels down under 30%, and in some cases maybe even under 20%. Look at the dew points in parts of Pennsylvania down into the middle teens That's really bone dry air that gets in here, and then we'll start to cool it off a bit as we move into Wednesday night and on Thursday. I want to at least take a look at the HRRR model tonight. See what it does. This is my first look at it. It actually matches up pretty well with the NAM. I figured that out when I was rolling it backwards. This is the new, very brand new HRRR that is just coming out now. So this is from 21Z, 5 o'clock. And it's not nearly as bullish with respect to the snow on the northern end. And you'll see how, look how far east that low is. Look how far southeast it is from the coast. We're talking a low that's at 38 and maybe, if you want to be generous, 68 3/4, 69. So it's at about 38.2 and 68.7, where the base of the L is on the map. That's pretty far out. You really need to have this low back at about 71 or 2 to have any kind of impact. Now, going back to that whole thing with the dew points, the reason why it's important is, of course, we mentioned at the beginning the fire danger risk, and the Storm Prediction Center also works on the risk for fire danger and for fire, and we have an elevated risk for much of Pennsylvania, northeastern West Virginia, most of the state of Maryland, northern Delaware, almost all of New Jersey except the extreme southeast, the western half of Long Island, much of Connecticut, and southwestern Massachusetts. That's all considered elevated risk. And you see that other area down where we have the red flag warnings. That is actually sitting in an area of that's critical with regards to the fire weather outlook. There's a legend on the lower corner. So extreme is the highest level that you can get to on their risk maps. Now, the other thing that's going to be in play for tomorrow and also on Thursday is going to be the risk of severe weather. That is going to start to increase over the next couple of days. So I just want to bring that up here. This is for Wednesday. We're going to start to see a risk of severe weather breaking out through the southern plains with the next low that's going to be for the end of the week. And then on Thursday, we have the risk shifting into the lower Mississippi Valley and the Gulf states. There's a fairly sizable area of slight risk being indicated for much of Louisiana, East Texas, much of Arkansas, and a good chunk of the state of Mississippi encased inside that area of marginal risk. So that is going to be for Thursday. I did not notice if did they put anything in there. Nothing in their 4 to 8 day time frame. So I guess at this point they're thinking it's probably too early for them to assess any kind of risk. So let's go to the new GFS and take a look at where we're going in the for the rest of this week and into the weekend. Of course, you've got the low that moves out. Now here comes the first of several pieces of energy that have been coming into the Pacific, and that's going to make for a low there in the southern plains on Thursday. Meanwhile, it's dry in the east. Now, the models are kind of going to start having a tough time with what is typical in the spring, and that is blocking. You usually in a normal spring, you get into a blocking pattern at some point, and that's going to have impact because of the fact that if the block is really strong enough in west space, then this is where you start to deal with marine layers and potential where you could be sitting for days and days with a northeast wind and just gloom and doom. So we're going to have models are going to have a real tough. They always have a tough time in the springtime with blocking. There's just too much going on, and they never really handles it well. But we do have a setup here for the end of the week with this next high going by to the north and this weak area of low pressure that comes out of the southern plains. There will be enough there to produce the potential for some severe weather, but it's not like we're getting any kind of wrapped up low here. That's going to push up into that high. You're going to get some overrunning precip, some rain. There might be some snow and maybe a little bit of sleet on the northern fringe of this at the start. Friday to me looks like a very raw day, a very cloudy day. Now the weekend is going to hinge on this kind of getting out of the way. And I'm betting that it does, and that we should see at least some drying to allow for some sunshine. And if it works, temperatures are going to get into the 60s. Now, where the models have been having trouble is with all this Pacific energy coming in, it seems as if more of it wants to come into the east a bit faster. So my initial view was that we would be okay into Monday and that we would have to wait for maybe Tuesday, Monday night or Tuesday, before we get into any showers. But it looks like now that we're seeing something running out ahead. You have high pressure, by the way, spreading out across southeastern Canada and over Hudson Bay. That is, on the prior run, was trying to make that flow, that high, push all the way down. And the GFS is struggling with this. You can see on Sunday, at least, that the frontal boundary is up to the north with that low sitting near Lake Superior. But as we move into Monday, the front kind of sags southward. There's a bit of a back door here that pushes southward with the high pressing down from southeastern Canada. So this puts us in an onshore flow here Sunday night and Monday, if this is correct. So you can forget about warming up into the 70s on Monday, as I was thinking maybe back a few days ago. And instead, we're going to be sitting with a low somewhere in the Ohio Valley, just kind of getting pressed down by this high to the north. If this verifies, this might be one of those miserable stretches that begins later Sunday and Sunday night, and particularly Monday and Tuesday of next week with that big high to the north. There's actually quite a bit of cold air that is running up through northern New England and back down over to Lake Huron, or at least cold enough that you're seeing precip there being indicated as a wintry mix, and that light blue snow there on the northern fringe. I'm going to switch back to the old GFS because we have more of that to go out. And here, the model from earlier actually had the low suppressed a bit further to the south, and slightly less of a high up to the north, but the same idea. And we're now into Wednesday of next week, and we're still dealing with onshore flow nonsense and lower pressures moving out to the east. And then another one comes for the latter part of next week. So this might be a good opportunity to just kind of take a look at what the upper air looks like here, because the development of a block going to be so important here. And there's the up near Greenland. You can actually see it. I'll just roll it backwards and watch how the pressures the heights start to rise across Greenland there, and there's a push of higher pressures coming in from the east, from Scandinavia across Iceland and into Greenland. So eventually the upper high actually moves over Greenland and it becomes west-based. And in the meantime, of course, with that happening, you're displacing the jet stream further to the south, and you're starting to see these cutoff lows that are forming from time to time. And that's always just such fun trying to forecast and figure those things out. I would just, immediately throw it out there for those, if there's still anybody left grasping at straws here as far as snow is concerned. No. I think we're at the time now, and given everything that's going on, the appearance of blocking is a normal spring phenomena as the jet stream basically is breaking down. We're seeing the very well-defined jet stream that you usually see during the wintertime beginning to break down as we work our way through the spring and head into the summer months. And in the process, you start to see the upper atmosphere becoming increasingly messy, with upper lows running around all over the place, and then you've got upper highs building at the same time. So this is, I think, this is where we're going in the next couple of weeks. So expect, and you know what a big fan I am of spring. I have to tell you, folks, of all the seasons, as from a forecasting standpoint, spring is the one that I like the absolute least, because of the fact that you've got the potential for blocking, which makes forecasting very difficult. It's always difficult in the wintertime with snow, but in the spring, it can really just throw you for a loop. One bad northeast wind and your forecast is sunk, both in terms of sky conditions and in terms of temperatures. But I want to go back to the new GFS at least and take a look at this. So here's the view here. They got that high, just doesn't really go anywhere. Look, it just sits there over eastern Canada for the early part of next week, and it's still there out into next Wednesday. So you're still dealing with onshore flow conditions. The European has a bit, I love, this is what I love about what I do, okay? So take a look here. I'm going to just take a look at the European for next Wednesday, for Tuesday, Wednesday, okay? Well, actually, even just look at it for Tuesday. There's a 987 low sitting just south of James Bay, okay? So, you know what? What this actually is in terms of the world of the European, this actually kind of goes back to my original idea that we would have warmer temperatures on warmer temperatures for Monday ahead of the next cold front, which will come through on Tuesday. There's no onshore flow here at all. And then you look at the GFS and look at the difference. Up in James Bay, there's a 1028 high on the GFS. There's a 1028 isobar. The high is actually even stronger up in Labrador with a 996 low sitting over Louisville. Okay, European GFS. This is going to be fun. This is really going to be fun figuring it out. The upper air might give us a clue as to why it's doing this. Now here's your GFS, of course. Now let's run this back. So we've been talking about all this Pacific energy coming in. The GFS actually has something that comes in the Pacific along about Thursday night, Friday, and then drops down into the plains and drops all the way down, wrapped up upper low sitting in northern Mississippi and Alabama, and then moves on its way into the East Coast on the old run, on the GFS. The European, totally different. The European brings that energy in to the west, but instead of digging it down in through the plains and heading it down into the Gulf states, actually kicks it across, because there's another shortwave here down near Texas that I guess forces that northern stream energy to just keep moving along in the northern stream, and that winds up with a system that's wrapped up near James Bay. There's your 88 low versus the big high, and a shortwave that is moving off the southeast coast of the U.S. Two totally different outcomes. I want to see what it looks like on the wider view. So here's the European. This is next Sunday. So we'll just go to Monday. So here's next Monday on the European, and here's next Monday on the GFS. So they both have this blocky signature up, that high, that big high that's building across Iceland into Greenland. They got that part of it, and they're both matched up. The difference is the fact that the GFS takes this system that comes into the Pacific and into the plains and dives it down into the lower Mississippi Valley, and the European wants nothing of that. It has it moving pretty much straight across along the northern plains and into the Great Lakes, and again, the outcome is different. But notice that blocking high on the European really gets settled over Greenland and pushes into Labrador into the long range. So pretty, fairly interesting, a fairly interesting overall pattern going forward that we're going to be dealing with. It's going to make for some very, let's put it this way, I guarantee you it's going to make for some very rocky forecasts and outlooks going forward. We always like to look at WPC's, the Weather Prediction Center's rainfall forecast map for the next 7 days. Of course, with all the energy coming into the Pacific, we're still seeing, large areas of rain being produced from the northern half of California all the way up to the coast with 3, 4, 5-inch plus amounts. In the east of the Rockies, we have an area of 2 and 3-inch rains, particularly along the Gulf Coast of southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi, Alabama. Not too shabby in Florida, really, 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch amounts. And in the Northeast, with whatever happens tonight and whatever happens for Friday and, of course, early next week, WPC is spreading out a couple of inches of rain in the Northeast and on up in through coastal New England. So at least I would think that from WPC's standpoint, and that goes through next Monday night. So they're probably thinking that we're going to see a decent shot of rain, maybe from that system coming in for Friday into Friday night. Maybe that produces a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then maybe again as we go into Sunday night, Monday, another round with a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. So I'm going to make myself a little bigger here and set myself back. There we go. And head on to the chat board with all you guys. So good to see. Good to see you. What do I drive? I drive a 2003 Toyota Corolla with 266,000 miles on it. This is the most. I've had 3 vehicles. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 vehicles since 1987. And I had 2 Nissan Pathfinders, 210,000 on the first one, 250,000 on the second one. Then I had a Dodge Dakota truck, got that to 216,000, and this one was actually my daughter's car, but since I drive a long distance to work, it gets like 39 miles to the gallon, which is great. I'm sorry, I just saw G but Reeseful. You're asking me, don't drive a Hyundai. You swore you saw me on I-287. Would that be 287 in New Jersey, 287 on the New York side in Rockland, or 287 on the Westchester side? But either way, it wasn't me, okay? This channel doesn't have any information for California. I'm leaving. Okay. Can't always cover California, but we do mention it from time to time. But I just did from WPC, showed you what the rainfalls were going to be in for California. Chuck Cardillo, so when Sandy hit, was there a huge block that caused that storm to move back to the west? That and a very big upper low that dove down into the central and southern Appalachians and just kind of sat in there, and it basically rotated up and around that. Maybe one of these days we'll take a look at it when weather's really, really quiet and we get closer to hurricane season, when it's a bit more a bit more relevant to whatever weather's going on. But yeah, there was blocking, and you had this big upper low. It was completely separated from the main part of the jet stream. Paul Roman, a call for a few inches in upstate New York. Will believe it when I'll see it. It have to, if it happens, it would be in the eastern part of the state, and it's got to be elevation. I just think that this thing is going to be much more to the east than anything else. Okay, who just hit super chat? Scott Briller. Thank you so much, Scott. Caribou today, 144 straight days of at least 1 inch of snow cover. Awesome. Thank you so much for hitting super chat. You really don't have to do that. You're on Patreon, and you're also on my Facebook supporter, but I really appreciate it. That'll get me, we'll put it in the cigar till for me. Appreciate that. Severe weather for Central PA, John Curry, for Monday of next week. You know what? I don't know. I think we have to resolve the fact. We have to resolve whether we're going to get the onshore flow, or is it not going to be an onshore flow. If the European was onshore, then if the GFS is wrong on it being onshore and the Europeans right, then perhaps we'll get some thunderstorms. And Scott pointing out, by the way, 144 straight days in Caribou, Maine of at least 1 inch of snow cover. Okay, Mr. Martinez, just really fast as far as I got a little bit of time, so why don't we take a look? And I will do this for you. Okay, let's bring up the maps. I'll go to the west and we'll take a look at what's happening in California. All right. Hang on. So let's go to the west. And, whoops. So, of course, when we look at the energy that's coming into the west, the trough is the mean trough has been busy out there. So we still have these short waves that are coming in. Now, here's one that comes in for tonight and Wednesday, and then you got an even stronger one that swings more toward Oregon and Washington, but you do get some of that jet coming into Northern California, and then you get a ridge that pops up late in the weekend and into next week. So that would at least give you a break as far as the rainfall is concerned. With regards to what's happening on the surface, so we're seeing rain there now. In fact, I just had the radar up a little earlier. We can go out west, and you do have much of the showers in California now and into the west have moved inland and have pushed on up into Nevada and Idaho, northern Utah, and you've got some scattered showers going all the way up through Oregon and into the southern part of Washington State. But when we look at this energy from tonight, that moves eastward. You get another low that comes up into Washington State, so a little bit of shower activity with that. And here's a stronger push going into Thursday night, Friday, with some heavy rain and some heavy mountain snows in the Sierra Nevadas, and then another push Friday night into Saturday of rain and heavy snows in the mountains. And then, of course, once you get this ridge to build out in the west, in the longer haul, that at least will give you a bit of a break. And you start to see a bit of it here, although there's energy coming into the northwest as we go through the latter part of next week. One of the things about a blocking pattern, if it sets up with a ridge out there in the west, it might at least help to shut things down as far as what felt like almost relentless with regards to the rain and snow that has occurred out in the west. Okay, so I mean, we do talk about California. We just, when there's stuff going on in the east, oftentimes we spend most of our time taking a look at that. All right, Johnny Quest, another cyclone getting ready to hit Australia again. I'm running out of time, Guy. I can't really show it now, but remind me tomorrow, and I will attempt to give it a look. All right, so we will excuse me. We will have the Joe and Joe show tonight on Facebook, and that is roughly at 9:25 Eastern time, and we'll give you an update on what's going on with this system in the east and where we think it's all going to be going in the longer term. And we'll be back tomorrow for our live stream. It'll either be at 6 o'clock or at 7 o'clock. When I do the live stream at 6 o'clock, I get a dinner hour after that, so I get to run out and actually get something to eat. So I'll juggle and see sometime, and then of course a lot depends on what's going on with me work-wise. Sometimes 6 o'clock works better than does 7 o'clock. But of course, whichever one it is, we'll post it a couple of hours before, so you have plenty of time to pop your popcorn, get your potato chips ready, and sit down and watch and watch a 30 to 45 minute weather live stream. And I thank you very much, by the way, for being here. All right, we will see you guys hopefully later on Facebook. If not, we will see you at the regular time tomorrow.